since it's the off season, it's time to work on my tools. Here are the 3 tools that nobody talks about that every baseball player needs to be developing in pre-season, okay? The very first tool that will make you a better baseball player across the board is developing greater mobility. Now, as you can see, I'm not exactly a giant specimen of a man. I could not have played football. I'm very much so a baseball player. I'm about 180 pounds and I'm 6 feet tall. So with that, I am still able to generate a ton of force, and this first key is how? Mobility. So I am hypermobile in the way that I move. I can move my lower half independent of my upper half, and all of that allows me to generate a lot of torque through my body. My body behaves as a whip because I am so loose and I can move around well. So as a result, if you are a player who's training in the off season, you need to be working on your mobility. Here's how I recommend you do that. The first thing is make sure you're getting in swings often, and make sure you're working on isolation movements. Work on swinging with just your upper half. Work on having your lower half go with your upper half staying. Do a lot of work with medicine balls, things that stretch your body in different ways. The greater mobility that you develop, both in these rotational swinging motions and in other static motions, that's going to benefit you in the game. So some of these other static mobility things that we can do, we can, with our arms, see how much mobility we can get with our shoulders, going this way forward. I do a shoulder routine that consists of a bunch of this kinds of stuff here with a lot of twisting and a lot of rotation, and I do this virtually every single day, especially now as I'm preparing for a season. So another thing that I like to do is a lot of trunk rotation. Yoga is one of the highest recommended things for baseball players to do as you get to the higher levels, and it's something that I neglected until I got older and realized, oh, as you get older, your mobility is one of the first thing that goes. So prioritize your mobility. I recommend that you do some form of yoga, do some form of static stretching, and some form of dynamic stretching that has a lot of rotational movements, especially with your trunk, especially focusing on your hips and your obliques, because the hips are usually the thing that is the bottleneck in the swing. So that's the first thing, mobility. Prioritize your mobility. That's the first tool that nobody talks about. Second tool is explosiveness. Now, baseball players are described as a Ferrari, not a semi-truck. If you get hit by a semi-truck, it's going to do a ton of damage, right? Well, as a baseball player, you don't have to be a semi-truck. I'm not a semi-truck as a player, right? But I am a Ferrari. I can move fast, okay? So part of what we have to learn as a hitter is how to be explosive, okay? It's good to lift heavy weight in the weight room, but if you're able to lift that heavy weight in a very slow manner, then it's not doing you any good when it comes to hitting the baseball, because bat speed is a large contributor to hitting for power. So is size, but that's a debate for another day. So we have to work on our explosiveness. So what does this mean? As we train in an explosive manner. So in the off season especially, even when you go up here to hit, as you're hitting off of the tee, there should be times where you take max effort swings off the tee where you're prioritizing explosiveness, okay? So that should be our thought process. Explosiveness is the second tool. Now, this applies even when we're working with our lower half. When I am doing, in other words, if I'm working on squats, rather than going super heavy weight and moving it slow, I'm doing lightweight to no weight and working on how explosive I can be out of my legs. So prioritize explosiveness. The third most important tool that nobody talks about is heart rate regulation. Now, bear with me on this. I promise it's not that complex of a concept. So when you go for a run and your heart rate gets up to a really fast, beating really fast, okay, a lot of times that'll get up to 140, 150, 160 beats per minute. When we get up to a workout level heart rate, our heart rate gets up this high, our performance goes down. Meaning if I were to try to rep out a bunch of push-ups after running a mile, I'm going to be able to do less than before I ran the mile. So as a baseball player, right, we don't have to train our endurance. We don't have to go run a marathon. But the issue is, if we are sprinting off the field and we are so winded as we step up to the plate, we're going to perform at way lower capacity than we're capable of. So we as players have to be able to regulate our heart rate, and for our heart rate to go up here and then to be able to regulate very quickly and neutralize before we step up to the plate, so that we step up to the plate with maximum maximum strength. That's the goal. So when you train, you don't have to necessarily train long distance running and try to keep your heart rate down as you run for 10 miles. That's not going to help you with this. But what you do need to do is do things that are explosive, like sprints, and then see how fast you can calm down. See how fast you can neutralize your heart rate, okay? The way that we do this is through explosive movements, and when you're exercising, this is something that you need to prioritize. So prioritize your mobility, prioritize your explosiveness, learn how to regulate your heart rate so that in the big moments you can perform like you're capable of. As always, I'm Coach RAC with Headbanger Sports. I hope you guys have a wonderful Christmas time with your family, and we'll see you guys next year.